Yesterday, I spoke to one of his senior economic advisors, Steve Moore. Watch this.
Every single problem in America, virtually every single problem, is alleviated to some degree with economic growth. We're at 1.2% growth over the last year. I guarantee you heard it first on the Stuart Marney Show, we get a Donald Trump presidency, we're going to have 4% growth for 5 years. Write it down, 4% growth for 5 years.
Okay. The chair of the program in business and finance at King's College Manhattan is Professor Brian Brenberg, and he's with us now. You heard it, and he spelled it out twice. 4% growth in each of the next 5 years. What do you say?
And I hope he's right. We absolutely need 4%
Well, make the
growth.
judgment.
If we get the good parts of Trump's plan, we can get faster growth. If
That's
we get
the tax
cut, the tax reform, and the regulatory reform, that's really big. He's talked about rolling back regulation. If we get that, great. But that's going to be counteracted, Stuart, if we get the bad parts of his plan, the anti-trade parts of his plan. Okay. The interventionist parts of his plan. So it's a question of what we get.
Let me hold on for a second.
Yeah.
I want to bring this right down to earth. Donald Trump proposes radical tax cuts for individuals and for corporations. Got it. He also proposed to get rid of a lot of regulation. Okay. If just that part of his plan is enacted, tax cuts and deregulate, you think we get 4% growth in each of the next 5 years, do you?
We get faster growth. Whether we get 4% growth, of course, depends on all sorts of other factors. But I think it's clear we get faster growth with those policies over 5 years.
You keep it up for 5 years?
I think, again, there's a lot of factors here, Stuart. You can get it for a prolonged period of time. But here's the problem. Here's the problem. You're talking about time frames here. You've got to think 20 years down the road with these tax cuts, not just 5 years, because the big critique of his plan isn't that it's not pro-growth, it's that it doesn't pay for itself, and you end up adding to deficits and debt, and you end up 10 years down the road with $10 trillion more in debt, and that's a problem for the economy. We can't grow through that.
But if you grow by 20–25% in a 5-year period, if you do that, then surely tax revenues coming into the Treasury are huge.
Sure, yeah, that's great. But he's also talked about, okay, Hillary Clinton talked about $275 billion in new infrastructure spending. What did he talk about doing? Doubling that.
Yes, but
you can't pay for that.
He was on this program saying he would double it. And he's saying he'll take in money, private money, put it into a fund which then rebuilds infrastructure. That's not the same as taxing or using government money or taxpayer money for it.
Stuart, I really hope that he can find all sorts of private funding for all the spending that he's talking about, but I highly doubt it. That's not the record of government over the past 50 years. The record of government is spending more than it takes in. That adds to debt and deficits. And we are coming to the day of reckoning, Stuart, within 10 years.
You're telling Steve Moore he's wrong. You're not going to get 4% growth.
I knew you were going to try to set that up. Steve Moore is a great guy. He's a smart guy. I love what he's doing with Donald Trump's tax plan. If they can stick to the right elements, the tax plan, the regulatory plan, good things will happen. But that's a big if.
Isn't that what we want? I mean, just separately. Isn't growth what we want more than anything else? As he said, you alleviate a lot of problems. You don't solve the problems, but you alleviate them if you've got rapid growth.
And that's the important thing to see here. It's a necessary component to solving these long-term problems. Absolutely. That's why it's important that we get that kind of growth. But you've got to do the right pro-growth things to get there. The problem with Trump is he's talking about pro-growth things and he's talking about anti-growth things at the same time.
Other side of the coin. You've seen Hillary Clinton's plan. Essentially, it is spend a whole lot of money and tax the rich. Will that give us growth? No,
it's a tax and redistribution. And she's actually very upfront about that, frankly. It's a tax and redistribution plan. It's not going to give us growth, and that's the huge problem here. Even economists on the left will tell you growth is absolutely indispensable to solve our long-term issues. She really isn't doing that. There's nothing in her plan that's... The only thing she's touting is the $275 billion in infrastructure spending. We've seen that story before. That is not a pro-growth story. We saw it 7 years ago here. We've seen it in Japan. It's not a pro-growth story.
You're a professional economist. That's what you do.
That's what I do.
You're a professor thereof.
I am.
And you're telling us that Trump's plan is better than Hillary's plan. I mean, I'm not going to get
You're trying to simplify. Here's what I'll say.
Well, for voters, that's what they're thinking.
It has the potential to be more pro-growth than her plan if he does the right things and stays away from the wrong things.
All right, Brian. We did hear you several times. All right, thanks, Brian Brenberg. Thanks a lot, sir. Appreciate it. Now.